Yeah, very quickly, it's my pleasure to introduce Steve Bell. Steve is just one of the real experts in the field of lean IT. Well, this lean, agile, DevOps. Yeah, he's a true professional. He's a great guy. He's author of numerous best-selling books and Shingo Prize-winning books, including Lean IT, Run, Grow, Transform, and Accelerate, along with Karen. He spent the last 25 years bringing Lean and Agile together, and really with the role of technology today just playing a much more important part in the world and everyday lives. He's not only a guy who loves what he does, he's trying to create greater value for teams, for organizations and their customers and society. So with that, I'd like to introduce Steve Bell on how Lean, Agile, and DevOps thinking and practice can accelerate the global response to climate change.
Thank you, Darren. That's a very kind introduction. And welcome to all of you out there. Thank you for your patience. This should give you all some comfort that even somebody who's supposed to be a technology guy can get tripped up by simple video sessions. So anyhow, here we go. To get started, I just want to say I'm going to talk very briefly today about a big topic I think that we're all concerned with. And I want to start by calling your attention, those of you who are on the session here. You may have seen this peculiar photo of me. And in the background, you can't quite tell, but there's a mountain there. And about 2 months ago, I was in Glacier National Park, and that thing behind me is a glacier or the remnants of a glacier. And those of you who don't know, Glacier National Park is on the backbone of the country, the Rockies, and shares the border with Canada. And all I want to say is if we don't take swift action here in the next few decades, I'm afraid we're going to have to rename this park. And that's what I want to talk about today. So I want to share briefly a familiar story to sort of ground us in why we need to talk about this. And it starts in a village, and the rains have not come and the crops are not doing well and people are hungry. And a small boy takes a soup pot and goes down to the riverbed and puts a stone in the pot, goes to a neighbor and says, "Excuse me, I'm making stone soup. Do you have anything for the pot?" One neighbor puts in some yams, another puts in some greens, maybe another puts in some dried beans. And when they're all done, they all meet in the village square and they build a fire and they cook the soup and they eat the soup together. And whenever I hear a version of this familiar story, I'm reminded of two things. First of all, it really does take a village to solve problems like this. And secondly, everyone has something to put in the pot. We not only can do that individually, but speaking today, I'm also talking professionally. So my talk is very brief about what the Lean, Agile, and DevOps community can do to help. Now, I'm speaking to two audiences today. One are the Lean professionals, the people who know about Agile, who may know about DevOps, but I'm also hoping this video will eventually reach a broader audience, people who may only have passing familiarity with these things. So it's tough in about 20 minutes to cover such a big topic for such a diverse audience. So I want to let you know that an extended version of this video where I go into deeper depth on many of the topics I'm covering here today, at the end of the session, I'll give you a link that you can go watch this extended video. And I hope you find my message useful and we'll share the link to that extended version. So 2 quick points I want for framing. Give you a framing on what important issues of the climate change are relevant for today, and a quick overview of Lean, Agile, and DevOps. First of all, Bill Gates, in his recent book, How to Avoid a Climate Disaster, gives the overall context for what we really need to do. Every one of us needs to do things like turn off the lights, turn down the thermostat, eat less beef, buy an electric car, and all of that. And those are all important, but they're not enough. As you can see from this chart, the large-scale societal-based things, everything humans do consumes fossil fuels and releases harmful gases into the atmosphere. So we need to take a big picture view of this. That's the first message. Secondly, for those of you who are new to Lean, Agile, and DevOps, remember there's a little more depth here if you want to go to the extended video. Lean emerged in post-World War II in Japan at Toyota and emphasizes flow. They had to compete with the industrial giants of the West, and they did it through quality, speed, and efficiency. Years later, a group came together and drafted the Agile Manifesto, which basically took the Lean concepts, the Lean principles, and applied them to software development. But they soon learned that they can develop software quickly, but if they don't have an environment, a technical environment to release it quickly and safely into, it didn't matter. So in 2009, 2010, DevOps began emerging, which began applying Lean operational excellence principles, often called Lean IT, to large-scale technology infrastructure, enabling continuous delivery of technology. Now, the important thing to walk away from is behind the mechanics of Lean, Agile, and DevOps are the principles. And just to quickly scan here, I'm not going to read these to you, but it's about people. It's about people owning processes, making processes flow. It's about problem solving, and it's a steady cadence of communication and collaboration across the organization. That's what Lean, Agile, and DevOps are really about, developing capability throughout the organization. So one more point. In Gates' book, and a lot of people think that technology alone is somehow going to save us, but the answers are found, yes, with technology, but also in enabling us to work together. So there are 5 contributions I want to speak to briefly here, things that we all can put into the soup pot enabled by Lean, Agile, and DevOps. Gates in his book makes 2 important points. There are things that we need to do now, that we can do now. We need to stop doing certain things and start doing more of other things. But to get to net zero by 2050, there are a number of things where we need breakthrough innovations. We just don't know how to do those yet, and we need to figure out how to get there. Then we need to deploy and scale global partnerships. We need to use data-driven problem solving. And along the way, we need to help the 80% or more of people on the planet at the bottom of the pyramid who are most vulnerable to climate change adapt and sustain themselves. So I'm going to walk through these 5 quickly. The first 2 things: accelerate what we can do now, which is operational excellence, and learn to do new things quickly, which is rapid innovation. These 2 are 2 sides of the same coin, and we need both sides of the coin to tackle this problem. So I want to talk to you briefly about the natural tension between doing things we already know and doing new things, the tension between development and operations. When customers have new ideas, they want new things, they ask us, and we go through development cycles. This is all uncertain. We don't exactly know what they want, how long it's going to take, what the risks are, what the costs are. We don't even know if it's going to work until we try it. So there's a lot of uncertainty in the development cycle. On the operations side, though, it's about stability and standards. It's about doing what we do today, the cash flow, the current customers, the current things. And there's a conflict. So when uncertainty meets the certainty, it causes delays. The development cycle gets slowed down because operations isn't able to put them into place. And when we try to speed operations up without doing the right things, we introduce defects, we introduce problems. What does this look like? Well, here's a good example, how things can go so badly, so quickly in a large-scale technology environment. Many of you may remember just a month and a half ago, Facebook experienced a 5.5-hour global outage. Some team in their network engineering group flipped a switch that changed the network routing, and everything in Facebook and WhatsApp and Instagram and all of the applications people use worldwide, billions of people to access and log into other apps, went dark. And it was pretty catastrophic for a lot of folks. Doctors' offices that were using WhatsApp in their daily activities to communicate suddenly weren't able to deliver services. Restaurants couldn't take orders, couldn't seat tables. And so that's an example of what can go bad very quickly. A little problem can cause significant troubles. Now let's think about something relatively simple like the Tesla many of us may have in our garages that not only charges overnight, but may update overnight, driving systems, performance. And recently, just a couple of weeks ago, many Tesla people, owners, woke up to find out an update had locked them out of their cars. They couldn't get into their cars. And while it was frustrating for many and perhaps amusing for more, think about what worse things could happen in that scenario. And the point I'm trying to make is think about the things that could happen as we're tackling climate change, when we're developing smart power grids, water grids, traffic systems, and other complex physical and digital systems, ecosystems that need reliability, they need resilience, but they also need flexibility. And that's what we're talking about here. So DevOps takes agile development, rapidly deploying capabilities rapidly into the hands of the customers in stable yet flexible infrastructure, technology infrastructure, and engineering practices so customers can get things quickly. How quickly? In a recent State of DevOps report, which is an annual survey that's been going on for 10 years now, the elite responders to this survey, the 20% or so of elite responders, release software on average 208 times faster than the rest. Real elite performers like Capital One, the financial institute, releases 50 to 100 times a day, new elements. The big technology organizations like Amazon and Netflix and Google release thousands of pieces of software every day across the hundreds of services in their platforms. So this is capable on a large scale. One of my clients years ago responded to me that they said we had to slow the technology folks down. They were releasing too quickly. So we had to ask them to only release to our global sales team once a week. So we could do a weekly huddle with our sales team nationally in order to learn the new features so we could use them. So it's possible to do this and do this safely. And I just want to, that's all I'm really going to talk about DevOps, but I do want to call your attention to a fabulous book. There are a lot of good books out there on DevOps if you want to learn more. But this one in particular, we helped Jez, Gene, and Nicole. Jez and Gene are two of the founders of the DevOps movement, and they're very, very schooled in lean capability. I worked with them for years. They get it, and DevOps is founded on the lean principles of flow. And this book tells not only how DevOps works, but based upon years of research and data analysis led by Nicole Forsgren, who's the data analysis person, they can tell you not just how DevOps works, but why, show you the data, show you the causality, and show you the behaviors that lead organizations to peak performance. I'm not trying to sell books here. The book is selling fine. You can find plenty of used copies on bookstores, on the internet, and maybe even a free copy in your local library. The point is, if you want to know more about what I'm talking about, because this is very important, how Lean, Agile, and DevOps come together, this book you might want to consider. And by the way, we got a Shingo Prize for this. We're very proud of that. So now the technology stuff is behind us. Let's talk about the third thing. How to deploy and scale new global partnerships. We're talking about global partnerships, doing things that have never been done before. And I want to talk very briefly about 3 scalable management systems. The first are multi-party global value streams. The Lean community has been doing this for decades, looking at large-scale value streams, how to map them, how to measure them, how to continuously improve them going forward. Many, if not most, of the largest value streams on the planet use these capabilities to keep themselves moving forward. Secondly, are large-scale Agile and DevOps management systems. The 3 most popular ones are shown here, and they all have their pluses and their minuses, but they all can take literally hundreds of teams across several companies, across time zones, languages, cultures, and bring rapid functioning Agile and DevOps teams together to quickly release software. And this was very handy in the pandemic in the last couple of years, because many of the organizations I've been talking to that do large scale technology were able to ride right through their workers going remote, because in a lot of cases their teams were already working remote. The third thing I want to talk about very briefly is strategy deployment. This is the peak of the pyramid. This is the capability to manage, coordinate, orchestrate activities across the organization. Strategy deployment emerged at Toyota decades ago. It's been adopted broadly all around the world. There's even a popular new method I want to mention just briefly called OKRs, Objectives and Key Results. It emerged at Intel years ago, was made popular by Google and other Silicon Valley companies. And OKRs, I've seen it in play many times, is a simplified version of Hoshin Kanri. But although OKRs work, and they're usually much better than the management system companies are replacing, it's still missing some key elements. I'm not even going to speak to what those elements are today, because we don't have time for that. But if you're out there, if you're heard of OKRs or using OKRs, you want to learn what might be missing, what you might be able to do better, that's part of what my extended presentation is covering. To bring it all together, the key to strategy deployment and all of these capabilities are the principles I talked about earlier. The mechanics are important, but it's the principles that make them work. And what happens when you put them all together is strategy deployment orchestrates the activities across extended value stream operations, delivering operational excellence and innovation through Agile and DevOps. And these management systems can scale. And my hypothesis here, my assertion with this presentation, is the same thing that has worked in years past in global enterprises can help us bring together these global alliances and partnerships to tackle these enormous issues that we have to tackle with climate change. I want to talk about one thing though, systemic resistance. We're going to see economic, financial, legal, cultural, social, political resistance. What can we do about that? Briefly, what we've learned with startups working with established organizations, there's tension, there's natural tension. Startups disrupt and established organizations are usually the ones being disrupted. But there's many examples in Silicon Valley of established organizations that acquire startups and they work despite the cultural tensions between them. That's because they have a shared purpose. But what's going to happen, I would expect going forward with climate change, is a lot of established organizations that have that need the status quo. Let's take the petroleum industry, for example. They may give the appearance of cooperating, while in many cases, they may drag their heels, or in lean terms, they may drag their anchors. What do we do about that? Well, with these management systems, we can call attention. We can shine a light on the problems, on the obstacles that are getting in their way. That might lead to public attention in the press. It might lead to public shaming and all of those messy things. And maybe there's a better way. And the better way I want to suggest to you is an experience South Africa went through a couple of decades ago when they came out of very difficult times. I don't want to spend any time on this today other than to reflect on Desmond Tutu's words that you shine a light on things, and by taking a path of trust and reconciliation and transparency, we can hopefully move forward through these difficult conflicts for the betterment of us all. The fourth ingredient I want to talk about very quickly, because we're already running out of time here. Data-driven problem-solving tools and methods. Briefly, we need to talk about problem-solving across the entire continuum of uncertainty. And there's a framework out there called the Cuneiform sense-making framework that breaks this into ordered and disordered problems, simple and complicated, complex and chaotic. Simple, baking a cake, use a recipe. Prescriptive. Complicated, baking a new kind of cake, using 3 other cake recipes to come up with it. You need a little more mentoring, you need a little more training, you need a little more experience, but it's still deterministic, it's still standards-based. Complex is a lot of subjective variables, a lot of complexity, things that don't always work the way you think they should. A good example there is raising a child. You can read all the books you want, but that child, day by day, interaction by interaction, is going to test you and take you in new directions. And then finally, chaotic environments, like an emergency room, where the first thing you need to do is act. You need to make sure the patient has a stable airway and a pulse before you can begin treating them. A good example of chaotic is our recent experience with the pandemic. When the pandemic first emerged, we had no data. The only thing we could do was act and pull the pandemic playbook that said, wash your hands, clean surfaces, wear masks, and do these other things. As the pandemic unfolded and we gathered more data, we realized it was airborne and that hand washing and surface cleaning maybe weren't so important. A lot of people criticize the scientific community, saying they don't know what they're doing, they're making this up, they're changing their minds. I'm sorry, but in chaotic environments, you learn as you go. You have to act, do the best you can going forward. And our venture into tackling climate change is going to be one chaotic situation after another. So we need to be comfortable with the full spectrum of problem solving. And as we learn things, we break them down, we make them complex. They eventually become just complicated problems. We solve them piece by piece going forward. There's a lot more about this, and I feel this is very important in the extended video, but I've got to move on. Data and AI. Nowadays, we have tons of data. The volume, variety, and velocity of data, and the ability to learn. Well, what can we do with that? The recent Nobel Peace Prize given to 3 economists came up with this idea called natural experiments, where we're able to tap into data from existing policy changes and derive statistically valid conclusions about policy decisions going forward. Think about this. How do we learn from what's already been done and carry that forward? A good example of someone who's doing this is the Gates Foundation, who for years has been pioneering data, intelligence, applying it to hunger, poverty, healthcare, education, and now climate change and the pandemic. And whenever the Gates Foundation funds someone doing this work, they require them to embark on an open access policy, which is to share what they're learning. And here's an example. An organization, a global organization, emphasizing food and water systems and agriculture systems, has been funded by Gates for years to lead the way in data science. So these are examples of how we take traditional problem solving and extend them into the world of data and AI to tackle these problems. Darren, my facilitator, I know I have 2 minutes left and I'm going to finish on time. I'm going to skip over systemic resistance, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, about how large organizations are going to throw fear and uncertainty, some things about how we can deal with them. If you're curious, look at these. If you're curious about what these slides are talking about, the time we lost at the front end with the technical difficulties, I'm sorry to say, I don't have time to talk about these things, but this is important because in the end, how do we take facts, data, and evidence and move us forward through this? And finally, helping those who are most vulnerable. We created Lean for NGO as a simple nonprofit community over 10 years ago to bring the Lean, Agile, and DevOps communities together with nonprofit leadership around the world to learn and share stories with each other. And we hope all of you out there watching this today will check this out. It's a free LinkedIn group. You can share your stories, start becoming part of the conversation. We encourage you to join that. So it takes a village. Here's a wrap up of the points I want to make. Here's a great big thank you of generosity to some folks I reached out to over the last couple of months to put this enormous topic, hopefully into digestible terms. I thought I could do it in 30 minutes. I didn't quite do it in 23. I'm sorry, I rushed a little bit through. And if you're interested, here's where you can find the extended version. So I want to slow down and thank all of you today for joining me. I hope you've at least found what I've said interesting, maybe even useful, and perhaps inspiring. So thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you. Great presentation, and apologies again for the technical difficulties in the beginning. Yeah, so I advise everyone to go and join the group, or go to the website lean4ngo.org. Sign up to the community. There's some great pieces of research and articles there. Also, Steve's extended presentation. Steve's got some real deep experience in this field, so definitely worth it. I've got a couple of questions, Steve. I don't know whether you want to try your camera or not. It's up to you. But I've got a couple of questions. Richard from the UK has asked, should we be using data and AI more to improve the way we improve? Good question.
Can you hear me, Darren?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Oh, okay. I don't have access to the camera.
Oh, right. No worries then. No problem.
So repeat the question, please. I was fiddling with my camera when you asked it.
No problem. Should we be using data and AI more to improve the way we improve?
Absolutely. I have been making this point for several years now. And with each passing month, particularly machine learning gets more and more skillful. It's scary how good machine learning is, because it can see patterns, it can test hypotheses in immense volumes of data. And it's being used, I'm sorry to say, it's being used in a lot of ways that are not helpful to us and not helpful to the world. And I think we need to use these technologies more. Lean, Agile, DevOps communities, the world at large, by those people who are trying to serve the common good. The complexity and the scale of the challenges we're facing in the coming years, they demand it. There's no way we can tackle these without those. You know, Gates Foundation has over 10 years now of proof of that. And we just need to get the right communities together with the right skills, bring them all to the table. Everybody has something to put in the pot, and we need to figure this out together.
Yeah, I'd say also, Steve, maybe one of the challenges, often where you see teams and organizations who've got lots and lots of data, they often struggle to structure that data in a way that they can work on the right things.
They do. The challenge, where the real pay dirt lies in AI, though, is beyond the data that's inside the realm of your organization. Yes, you have an ERP system. Yes, you have all these internal systems. But the data to be mined out there are the immense volumes of data, like the economists showed. And a lot of that data is public, but we've got privacy issues. We've got to respect people when we tap into this data. We've got to be very careful and very respectful, because we've seen some clear evidence in the last year or two of what organizations, and I'm just going to name somebody, Facebook, can do when they get a hold of this data serving their own purposes. And we've got to do better than that. But there's a world of data out there, and it's growing exponentially every day, and we'd better get better about how we use that and connect it, certainly, with the data inside our own enterprises.
Yeah. And yeah, Richard touches on that again. It's often the challenge that this data is across many systems.
Yes.
So it's how you pull that together. And
well, that's what data science is all about. Big data was a term coined years ago as terms of the 3 V's: velocity, variety, and volume. It's big, it's fast, and it comes from various ways. And there are data scientists out there and platforms out there that are able to scoop this data up in real time, and in nearly real time see correlations and patterns amongst them. It exists. It exists today. But the people who know how to do this are generally not communicating with the lean people and the agile people, well, the agile people more so, but not the lean folks inside the organizations. Again, we need to bring them together somehow. And to the original question, I've been banging the drum on this for years now, and I'm starting to see it happen, but we need to do more. We need to get beyond our inward-facing problem-solving skills that the lean community has worked with for years, and we're very good at it, but there's a glass ceiling there, and we need to get past that ceiling if we're going to solve these bigger problems.
Yeah, and on that note, Ghislaine, I hope I pronounced that correctly, has asked about, so the lean thinking improvement objectives to sustainable development goals and target is a challenge in itself. Any recommendations?
Boy, would you repeat that question once more? I really want to take that in.
Yeah, linking lean improvement objectives to sustainable development goals and targets is a challenge in itself. Any recommendations?
Oh boy, that's kind of that systemic resistance thing that I had to rush through. If your internal lean development goals, let's say they're tied to your Hoshin, let's say they're tied to your organizational Hoshin, and your organizational Hoshin is about expanding market share, expanding sales, expanding profits, with no regard whatsoever to the economic and environmental externalities of what you're doing and pursuing those internally facing goals, to the externalities about what you're doing to the planet and the people and the animals that live there, then you have a problem. And how much longer are you going to be able to keep doing that before the forces start, forcing you to stop doing that? I think that's the question each of us have to ask ourselves individually. What do I do today to do a little bit better, and tomorrow to do a little bit better? We need to work that into our oceans, and take the bigger view of our role in this planet, because the planet is fighting back now, and I guarantee you, it's going to win, and we need to adapt.
Yeah, so as well as business goals and customer goals, we need community goals and environmental goals, not just for the government, but maybe for the small tribes in our society. So we talk about tribes in the world of Scrum and Agile. We're all a tribe. We're all part of a community and remote communities. Maybe it starts with us.
Yeah.
Where can we make a difference? What could our goals be to enrich this environment that we work and live in?
I couldn't agree with you more, Darren. In fact, the pandemic, the COVID pandemic that we've experienced over the last 2 years, and unfortunately here we come around again for another cycle of it, apparently with Omicron. That is really, I mean, back in 1918, the Spanish flu was a global pandemic, but it took a couple of years to play out. The global pandemic with COVID took weeks, and it was spread around the world. So this is really the first time we have experienced in real time around the world the same crisis, the same threat. And we need to learn from that, because more threats are coming. And to your point, we're all just one tribe now, because I'm breathing the same air they're breathing on the other side of the planet, just at a different time. And so that's just the way we have to think now.
Great. Thank you, Steve.
Excellent.
Yeah. Thank you very much again.
And Darren, one more thing. Thank you to you. Thank you to everybody who's still around listening. Any of you that want to reach out to me and continue this conversation, on that last slide, I posted my email. And I'm going to have that extended video link posted on Lean for NGO in about an hour.
Excellent.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Great. Thank you, guys. Enjoy the rest of the conference.